The airlock hissed open, and Lieutenant Carter stumbled through, his helmet cracked and oxygen gauge blinking red. He had 30 seconds, maybe less. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by bioluminescent strips that pulsed like veins along the walls. He didn't care whose ship this was. He just needed air. His boots hit the metal floor hard as the outer door sealed behind him. The inner door stood before him, smooth and alien. No visible controls. Carter slammed his fist against it. His vision tunneled. 20 seconds. The door split vertically with a sound like tearing silk. She stood there. Carter had seen plenty of species during humanity's expansion into the void. The Kroll with their chitinous plates, the Vess with their crystalline bodies, even the nightmare fuel that was the Drexy swarm. But this woman, if he could call her that, made his brain struggle to process what his eyes reported. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that shifted between deep violet and midnight blue, like oil on water. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked at him in sequence. Her face was angular, beautiful in a way that felt wrong and right simultaneously. She wore robes that seemed to move independently of any breeze, flowing around her like liquid shadow. Carter's helmet display went black. 10 seconds. He pointed at his cracked faceplate, then at his throat, the universal sign for dying. She had to understand. Every species understood suffocation. Those 4 eyes studied him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Not hostile, not friendly, analytical. Like he was a specimen, she was deciding whether to preserve or discard. 5 seconds. Carter dropped to his knees. His lungs burned. He'd survived the Centauri blockade. He'd walked away from the Kepler station disaster. He refused to die begging in an alien hallway. The woman tilted her head. One of her hands, he noticed through the darkening edges of his vision, had 6 fingers. They moved in a pattern he couldn't follow, graceful and purposeful. 2 seconds. She stepped back. The door began to close. Carter's hand shot out, wedging into the narrowing gap. The door stopped. He looked up at her, rage replacing fear. If he was dying here, she'd remember his face. She'd know a human had fought to the last breath. Their eyes met. She raised one 6-fingered hand to her face, touched 2 fingers to what might have been her lips, then extended them toward him. The gesture felt ceremonial, final. The door resumed closing. Carter's hand withdrew on instinct as the edges would have crushed it. The seal completed with a soft click. He collapsed onto his back, his helmet display completely dead now. The air in his suit was gone. He waited for the blackness. Instead, he felt something. The atmosphere around him changed. Pressure equalized with a pop that made his ears ring. He gasped involuntarily, and his lungs filled. Oxygen. The corridor was flooded with breathable air. Carter ripped his helmet off and sucked in lungfuls of the sweetest air he'd ever tasted. It was cool, slightly humid, with a faint scent like ozone after rain. He was alive. But why? Carter pushed himself up, his hands shaking from the adrenaline crash. The corridor stretched in both directions, curving gently out of sight. The bioluminescent strips pulsed faster now, like a heartbeat responding to his presence. He needed answers. He needed to know why she'd sealed the door, then flooded the corridor with air. He needed to know what kind of ship he'd boarded. His suit's external sensors were still functional. The readout on his wrist display showed the atmosphere was not just breathable, but optimal. 21% oxygen, balanced nitrogen, trace elements that matched Earth standard almost perfectly. Too perfect. This air had been synthesized specifically for human physiology. That meant she knew what he was. Carter moved forward, choosing the direction the woman had been facing. His boots made soft sounds against the floor. which wasn't metal after all, but something organic, slightly yielding. The walls curved inward at the top, creating a tunnel effect. Every 20 feet, circular doors, identical to the one she'd closed, stood sealed on alternating sides. He tried the first one. It didn't respond to touch or proximity. He tried speaking. Nothing. The doors remained closed, their surfaces smooth and featureless as obsidian. The corridor opened into a chamber that made Carter stop dead. It was a garden, an impossible garden floating in the void of space. The ceiling was transparent, revealing the stars beyond and the wreckage of his patrol ship tumbling past in pieces. Trees that shouldn't exist outside Earth grew from soil that glowed faintly blue. Water flowed upward from pools before cascading back down in spirals that defied gravity. Flowers with petals like stained glass chimed softly as something like wind passed through them. And she was there, standing beside a pool, watching him. Carter's hand went to his sidearm before he remembered it had been damaged in the attack. Not that shooting her seemed smart. She'd saved his life, probably. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. For the air. She didn't respond, those 4 eyes fixed on him with that same analytical stare. Up close he noticed details he'd missed. Her skin didn't just shift colors. Patterns moved beneath the surface like schools of fish. Her hair, if it was hair, floated around her head in individual strands that twisted and coiled independently. "I'm Lieutenant Dean Carter." He tried again. "Human. Earth. Do you understand any of this?" One of her hands rose. The 6 fingers moved in that same fluid pattern. This time he watched closely. It wasn't random. It was language. Sign language, maybe, or something more complex. She turned and walked deeper into the garden. After 3 steps, she paused and looked back at him. An invitation. Carter followed, his mind racing. First contact protocols demanded he attempt communication, gather intelligence, and report back, except his ship was debris and his crew was dead. The Vrexian attack had come from nowhere, tearing through their shields like they were tissue paper. He'd barely made it to the escape pod before the reactor went critical. The Vrexians were humanity's newest enemy, a reptilian species that had declared war 6 months ago for reasons diplomats still didn't understand. They were ruthless, efficient, and their technology outmatched human ships 3 to 1. This vessel had been nearby when Carter's pod failed. He'd seen it on sensors, a massive structure that didn't match any known configuration. Desperation had made him dock with what he'd thought was an abandoned station. The woman stopped beside a tree with silver bark. She placed her hand against it, and the bark peeled back, revealing a hollow interior filled with glowing crystals. She selected one about the size of Carter's thumb and turned to face him. She held it out. Carter hesitated. Every training scenario, every briefing about alien contact, screamed at him to be cautious, but he'd already breathed her air, walked her corridors, and invaded her ship. Caution seemed pointless now. He took the crystal. It was warm, almost hot, and the moment his skin touched it, his vision exploded with light, not blinding, but overwhelming. Information poured into his mind, not words, not images, but pure meaning. Her name was unpronounceable, but the concept translated roughly to observer of boundaries. She was not the ship's captain. She was the ship. The vessel and the woman were one entity, a biological construct that had been traveling the stars for longer than human civilization had existed. She had watched his species for decades, watched them crawl into space, make alliances, start wars. She found them fascinating, particularly their capacity for surviving impossible situations through sheer stubborn refusal to accept death. Carter had impressed her. The crystal went dark. He staggered, his head spinning. "You're the ship?" he whispered. She nodded once. Then she pointed past him, toward the transparent ceiling. Carter turned and saw them. Dozens of Vrexian warships sliding through space in formation. They were heading for Earth's outer colonies, and they hadn't detected this vessel. The woman touched his shoulder with those 6 fingers. The sensation was electric. More information flooded through him. She was offering him a choice. She could take him to safety, drop him at the nearest human outpost, or he could stay, help her understand his species better. In exchange, she would help him stop the Vrexian fleet. One living ship against dozens of warships. Carter looked at the wreckage of his patrol vessel drifting past. He thought of his crew, of the colonies that would burn if the Vrexians weren't stopped. He met her 4-eyed gaze and smile. "Let's go to war." The garden dissolved around them. Carter's stomach lurched as the floor became transparent, then the walls, then everything except the woman herself. He was standing in space, surrounded by stars, with only her solid presence keeping him anchored to reality. "This is how you see," he breathed. She nodded. Her hand gestured outward, and the view shifted, zooming past asteroids and debris fields until the Vrexian fleet filled his vision. 37 ships, each one bristling with weapons that had shredded human vessels across 4 systems. Their hulls were dark green, segmented like insect carapaces, and they moved with predatory grace. The lead ship was twice the size of the others, a dreadnought. Carter had seen the classified footage from the Battle of Proxima, where one of those monsters had destroyed an entire battle group in 11 minutes. The woman's fingers moved. More information pressed into Carter's mind, gentler this time. She wanted to know their weakness, their patterns, how humans had fought them. "We haven't," Carter admitted. "Not successfully. They're faster, better armed, and their shields regenerate. We've tried kinetic strikes, plasma torpedoes, even nuclear warheads. Nothing penetrates deep enough to matter." She tilted her head. One hand touched the empty air, and a Vrexian ship appeared between them, a perfect holographic reproduction. It rotated slowly. Her fingers traced along its hull, pausing at specific points. Carter watched the pattern. She was showing him something. Weak points? No, something else. The places she touched glowed faintly, and he realized they were all equidistant from each other, forming a geometric pattern across the hull. "Power distribution nodes," he said suddenly. "You're mapping their energy grid." She made a sound, the first sound he'd heard from her. It was musical, like wind chimes in a storm, and it clearly meant affirmation. Carter stepped closer to the hologram. If you could hit all those points simultaneously, the feedback would cascade through their systems. But that would require perfect timing and multiple strike points. No human ship has that kind of precision. The woman gestured again. The view expanded, and Carter saw her ship for the first time from the outside. It was beautiful and terrible. Organic curves flowed into geometric precision. The hull wasn't metal, but something that looked grown, like coral or bone, and along its surface, thousands of small openings appeared, weapon ports. She wasn't a ship, she was an arsenal. "How many can you target at once?" Carter asked. Her response flooded his mind. All of them. She could engage every Vrexian vessel simultaneously with independent targeting. But there was a problem, and the emotion that came with the information felt like frustration. She lacked tactical data. She'd never fought Vrexians, didn't know their combat responses, their evasion patterns, their countermeasures. She could fire on them, but without understanding how they'd react, her strikes might miss or be deflected. That's why she needed him. Carter's pulse quickened. "You want me to predict their movements?" Tell you how they'll respond? Affirmation. I'm a patrol ship lieutenant. I've read the reports, studied the engagements, but I've never commanded a fleet action. I'm not qualified for this. She placed both hands on his shoulders. The touch sent cascading information through his nervous system. He saw himself through her perspective, saw the moment he pounded on her door with seconds of air remaining, saw his refusal to beg, saw the rage in his eyes when she'd started to close the door. She'd been testing him, seeing if he'd break, if he'd plead or show weakness. Humans didn't break. That's what fascinated her. That's what made them valuable. Carter took a shaky breath. Show me their current formation. The Vrexian fleet reappeared, positions updating in real time. They were arranged in a three-dimensional lattice, overlapping fields of fire, protecting each vessel. Standard Vrexian doctrine. The dreadnought held the center, with lighter cruisers forming an outer screen and heavy destroyers filling the middle layer. They'll pivot the moment they detect a threat, Carter said, thinking aloud. The outer screen will collapse inward, creating a defensive sphere. The dreadnought's shields will extend to cover the damaged ships while the destroyers return fire. The woman's fingers danced. The hologram responded, showing the fleet executing exactly that maneuver. But they're arrogant, Carter continued. They've never lost a major engagement. They won't expect a single vessel to be a threat. The first few seconds, they'll hesitate. Try to identify you. That's your window. She showed him her firing solution. It was impossibly complex. Thousands of projectiles launching from her hull, each one following a curved trajectory to strike multiple targets. The paths crisscrossed through space in a pattern that looked like chaos, but was actually perfect mathematics. Carter studied it, found the flaw. Here, he pointed. These three destroyers, they have overlapping shield frequencies. If you hit them simultaneously, they'll boost power to compensate. That creates a resonance cascade. They'll actually strengthen each other. She adjusted the pattern. The three destroyers would be hit in sequence now, each strike coming before the shield boost could propagate. They worked together for what felt like hours, Carter calling out tactical considerations, the woman refining her attack. He told her about Vrexian aggressive patterns, how they'd rush a wounded enemy rather than finish them at range. She showed him how to exploit that, creating false damage signatures that would lure ships out of formation. Finally, the pattern was complete. This could work, Carter said, but you need to understand, even if we destroy this fleet, the Vrexians will send more. This is a war humanity is losing. One battle won't change that. The woman's response was immediate. She showed him a star map, dozens of systems highlighted, Vrexian supply routes, staging areas, shipyards. She'd been watching them too. She knew where they built their vessels, where they stored their resources, and she was offering to help destroy it all. Carter stared at the map, at the opportunity she was presenting. Humanity's military command would kill for this intelligence, but there was something else in the information she shared. A condition. She would help humanity win this war, but in exchange, she wanted access. Wanted to move among humans, study them, understand them. She wanted Dean Carter to be her guide to humanity. You're asking me to bring an alien entity, one we know nothing about, into human space, into our colonies, our worlds. Affirmation. They'll never allow it. Command will want to study you, dissect your technology. They'll see you as a weapon to be controlled. She showed him the truth then, showed him what she could become if she chose. The garden vanished, and her true form emerged. The ship expanded, its hull opening like a flower. Weapons emerged that made human technology look like stone tools, energy patterns that could tear planets apart. She was ancient, powerful beyond measure, and she was choosing to help. Why? Carter asked. Why help us at all? Her answer was simple. Humanity reminded her of herself. Young, aggressive, refusing to accept their limitations. She'd been alone for millennia, watching species rise and fall. She was tired of observing. She wanted to participate. Carter looked at the Vrexian fleet, at the map of their empire, at the woman who was offering humanity a chance at survival. Okay, he said, but we do this my way. We hit the fleet, save the colonies. Then I take you to meet command, and we convince them together. No secrets, no hidden agendas. She extended her hand, all 6 fingers spread. Carter took it. Let's show the Vrexians what happens when they mess with Earth. The acceleration should have killed him. Carter felt the ship move, felt reality bend as she transitioned from stealth observation to combat velocity, but his body registered none of the G-forces that should have liquefied his organs. The transparent floor beneath him showed stars streaking past, the Vrexian fleet growing larger by the second. How are you compensating for the acceleration? He asked. Her response came with amusement threaded through it. She'd encased him in a localized gravity field, independent of the ship's movements. To her, he was fragile, precious cargo that needed protection. I'm a combat officer, Carter protested. I've pulled 8 Gs in a fighter. She showed him her current acceleration, 42 Gs and climbing. Right. Fragile cargo. Got it. The Vrexian fleet was seconds away now. Carter watched their formation, looking for any deviation from predicted behavior. The outer screen ships were already adjusting, their sensors picking up the approaching mass, but they weren't raising shields yet, still trying to identify the threat. Wait for it, Carter murmured. Wait until they commit. A Vrexian destroyer broke formation, accelerating toward them. Aggressive response. Exactly what Carter had predicted. 2 more followed, forming a intercept triangle. Now they'll scan you, Carter said. 3, 2, 1. The woman's hull blazed with reflected energy as multiple targeting beams swept across her surface. Carter felt her amusement again. They were trying to determine her weapons capacity, her shield strength, her threat level. They had no idea what they were looking at. The Vrexian dreadnought transmitted something. Carter's limited understanding of their language caught a few words. Unknown vessel, withdraw or be destroyed. Standard intimidation protocol. They've given you a warning, Carter said. In about 5 seconds, those 3 destroyers will open fire. That's when the whole fleet commits. They'll interpret your survival as hostility. The woman waited, patient, precise. The destroyers fired. Plasma bolts screamed through space, each one carrying enough energy to vaporize a human cruiser. They struck her hull and simply vanished, absorbed into her organic armor without leaving a mark. The Vrexian fleet exploded into action. Exactly as predicted, the outer screen collapsed inward. Shield frequencies synchronized. The dreadnought's massive generators spun up, extending protective barriers over the smaller vessels. Destroyers pivoted into firing positions. It was textbook Vrexian defensive doctrine, executed with mechanical efficiency. It was also their death sentence. The woman fired. Carter had seen naval bombardments, had witnessed coordinated missile strikes from entire battle groups. Nothing compared to this. Thousands of projectiles erupted from her hull simultaneously, each one a sliver of hyperdense matter accelerated to relativistic speeds. They crossed the distance in microseconds. The firing pattern Carter had helped design activated perfectly. The first wave struck the outer screen ships at their power distribution nodes. Shields flared and died as energy grids overloaded. The second wave hit before they could compensate. punching through hulls like they were paper. The destroyers tried to boost their overlapping shields. The woman's sequential timing prevented the resonance cascade, each ship dying alone as its neighbors watched helplessly. The dreadnought's shields held. Barely. Its captain was good, Carter realized. Better than the intelligence reports suggested. The massive vessel was already rotating, bringing its heaviest weapons to bear while cycling shield frequencies to prevent targeting locks. "He's adapting," Carter said, randomizing his defensive pattern. The woman showed him her solution. She'd predicted this too. The dreadnought's heavy armor required more power to move than its lighter escorts. Every rotation, every maneuver pulled energy from shields. She'd been counting the expenditures, calculating the exact moment when the shields would drop to minimum sustainable levels. That moment was 3 seconds away. The dreadnought fired its main cannon. The beam was blue-white, brighter than the stars, and it carried enough destructive force to crack a moon. It struck the woman's hull dead center. She didn't even slow down. Carter watched the beam splash across her surface, the energy spreading out like water hitting stone. Whatever she was made of, it existed beyond the Vrexians' ability to damage. They might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. 2 seconds. The remaining Vrexian ships were scattering now, their formation broken. Some tried to run, others kept firing, desperation overriding tactical sense. The woman picked them off methodically, each shot perfectly placed. No wasted ammunition, no excessive force, just efficient, calculated destruction. 1 second, the dreadnought's shields flickered. Just for a fraction of a moment, a power fluctuation caused by the strain of maintaining maximum output while maneuvering. The woman's projectile passed through the gap and struck the dreadnought's reactor core. The explosion was silent in the vacuum, but beautiful. The massive ship came apart from the inside, its hull plates peeling away like flower petals. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as ammunition stores cooked off. Within 10 seconds, there was nothing left but expanding debris. Silence fell across the battlefield. 37 Vrexian warships reduced to wreckage in under 3 minutes. Not a single shot had come close to seriously threatening the woman's hull. Carter stood in the middle of the carnage, his hands shaking with adrenaline. "We just won. We actually won." Her response carried a note of gentle correction. She had won. He had simply told her where to aim. "Details," Carter said, grinning. "We're a team now." The view shifted. She was showing him something new. Long-range sensors displayed more Vrexian ships, dozens of them, converging from multiple systems. They detected the battle, registered the destruction of an entire fleet, and they were coming in force. Carter's grin faded. How many? 143 vessels, including 4 dreadnoughts. "Can you handle that many?" Her response was complicated. Yes, she could destroy them, but there were Vrexian colonies nearby. Civilian populations. If she engaged such a large force, the battle would spread. Collateral damage was inevitable. She'd been observing long enough to know the Vrexians used their civilians as shields, building military stations in orbit above populated worlds. Humanity did the same thing. Most species did. "So we can't fight them without killing millions of civilians," Carter said slowly. Affirmation. But there was something else in her response, an alternative. She could take him to the source, to the Vrexian homeworld system. Their military command was there, their central coordination networks. If she struck there, the military response would collapse. The war would end.
"You're talking about decapitation."
Taking out their leadership? Yes, but it would require going deep into Vrexian territory, past their defensive perimeters, and she would need Carter to identify which installations were military and which were civilian. Her sensors could detect ships and weapons, but she couldn't distinguish between a command center and a hospital. She needed his humanity, his ability to make moral distinctions in the chaos of war. Carter thought of his crew, of the colonies the Brexian fleet had been heading toward, of the millions of humans and aliens caught in this war. If we do this, we end it? The whole war? She couldn't promise that, but without central coordination, the Brexian military would fragment. Individual fleets might keep fighting, but the organized invasion would collapse. It would give humanity time to negotiate, to find a diplomatic solution, or to prepare for round two. How long until those reinforcements arrive here? 18 hours. And how long to reach the Brexian homeworld? 12 hours at her maximum sustainable velocity. Carter closed his eyes. This was beyond his authority, beyond his rank. He should try to contact command, get orders, follow protocol, but his communications were dead, his ship destroyed, and the reinforcements would arrive long before he could get guidance. He was on his own. "Take us to their homeworld," Carter said. "But we do this smart, surgical strikes only, military targets. And if there's any doubt, any chance of civilian casualties, we abort. Agreed?" The woman extended her hand again. This time, when Carter took it, he felt something new. Not just information transfer, something deeper. A connection forming between human and living ship. A partnership forged in fire. Let's go end a war. The journey to Vrexian space took 11 hours and 43 minutes. Carter spent most of it learning to interface with the woman's systems, his mind gradually adapting to the flow of information she provided. She taught him to see as she saw, to process data streams that would have overwhelmed a human brain days ago. The connection between them deepened with each passing hour. He learned her history. She'd been created by a species called the Architects, beings who'd mastered biological engineering on a scale that made human technology look primitive. They'd built living ships to explore the galaxy, each one a unique intelligence designed to survive alone for millennia. Then the Architects had vanished. No war, no catastrophe. They'd simply transcended, moving beyond physical existence in ways she still didn't understand. They'd left their creations behind, orphaned and purposeless. She'd been wandering for 8,000 years. "You've been alone all that time?" Carter asked. Not entirely alone. She'd encountered other species, observed them, sometimes helped them in small ways. But the Architects had designed her to be separate, to watch rather than participate. Breaking that programming to help Carter had been difficult. Choosing to fight alongside humanity was revolutionary. Why break it now? Why us? Her answer came with layers of meaning. Humanity was young but fierce, curious but cautious. They built alliances while preparing for war. They created art while developing weapons. The contradictions fascinated her, and their refusal to accept extinction, even when facing superior enemies, reminded her of the Architects. They'd been survivors too, before they transcended. Carter processed this. You think we might follow them someday, evolve into something beyond physical form? Possibly, or humanity might destroy itself first. She'd seen both outcomes among younger species. The uncertainty was what made them interesting. That's a depressing way to look at it. She sent amusement. Depressing was a human concept. She found the uncertainty beautiful. The Vrexian homeworld system appeared ahead. 3 planets orbited a yellow star. The second planet was their origin world, a heavy gravity sphere wrapped in green-tinted clouds. Orbital platforms surrounded it like a metal crown. Fleet anchorages, construction yards, command stations. And somewhere in that maze was their military leadership. How do we identify the command center without scanning actively? Carter asked. If we light up their sensors, they'll know we're here. The woman showed him her solution. She'd been passively monitoring their communications for the past hour, using sensors the Brexians couldn't detect. She'd mapped the traffic patterns, identified which stations received the most encrypted transmissions, which ones had the highest-ranking personnel moving through them. 3 installations stood out. Carter studied them through her sensors. The first was massive, a rotating ring station with docking ports for capital ships, military headquarters, almost certainly. The second was smaller but heavily shielded, positioned in high orbit. Intelligence division, probably. The third was different. It sat at a Lagrange point between the homeworld and its largest moon, a sleek structure that looked more like a sculpture than a station. That one, Carter said, pointing at the third, that's where their command authority sits. It's positioned to observe both the planet and the fleet anchorages, close enough to respond to threats but far enough to avoid direct attack. And look at the communication density. Everything flows through there. The woman confirmed his assessment. Her passive scans showed gravitational lensing around the structure, exotic shielding technology that bent space itself. Whatever was inside, the Brexians protected it like nothing else in the system. Can you penetrate those shields? Yes, but doing so would require a sustained bombardment. 30 seconds minimum, long enough for the Brexians to detect the attack and respond with everything they had. Carter studied the defensive platforms scattered throughout the system. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. A full-scale assault would turn this into exactly what they were trying to avoid, a bloodbath. We need a distraction, he said. Something that draws their attention away from the command station. The woman showed him an alternative. She could split her attention, attacking multiple targets simultaneously, but her precision would decrease. Civilian casualties became more likely. No, we're not compromising on that. There has to be another way. Carter paced across the transparent floor, thinking. The Brexians were aggressive, territorial. They responded to threats with overwhelming force. That was their nature. So what if the fleet anchorages, Carter said suddenly, they're automated facilities, right? Minimal crew, the woman confirmed. Mostly robotic systems with small maintenance teams. Hit those. Make it look like we're trying to cripple their shipbuilding capacity. They'll scramble every defensive platform to protect the yards. While they're distracted, we strike the command station. She processed this, showed him the risk. Some Vrexians would die in the anchorage strikes. Maintenance crews. Technicians? Maybe a few hundred total. Carter's jaw tightened. How many humans have the Vrexians killed in this war? Over 200,000. With projections suggesting millions more if the war continued. Then we proceed. Those technicians chose to support their military. I don't like it, but I won't sacrifice human lives to maintain moral perfection. The woman's response carried approval mixed with something else. Sadness, maybe. She was teaching him the cost of command, the weight of decisions that balanced lives against lives. Welcome to her world. She'd been making these calculations for millennia. Let's make it count then. Show me the strike pattern. They refined the plan for 20 minutes. The woman would approach from the system's edge, using the star's radiation to mask her presence. She'd launch her initial strike on the anchorages from maximum range, then accelerate toward the command station while the Brexians were scrambling to respond. Total time from first strike to command station destruction, 4 minutes. What about escape? Once we hit the command station, every ship in this system will be hunting us. She showed him her speed. At maximum acceleration, she could leave the system before the Brexians even finished launching their intercept forces. They were fast, but she was faster. Then we're committed. Once we start, there's no stopping. Affirmation. Carter took a deep breath. He was about to authorize an attack on an alien homeworld system, an act of war that would kill hundreds, maybe thousands. If he was wrong, if this didn't end the conflict, he'd have done nothing but escalate the violence. But if he was right, execute the plan. The woman moved, her hull reconfigured, weapon ports opening along her entire surface. The projectiles she'd used against the fleet were nothing compared to what emerged now. Massive kinetic penetrators, each one the size of a human shuttle. They launched in complete silence, accelerating to speeds that made them invisible to conventional sensors. The anchorages never saw them coming. The first installation shattered, its automated systems destroyed before they could even register the attack. The second followed 3 seconds later. Then the third, fourth, fifth. Explosions bloomed across the orbital space, silent flowers of destruction. Alarms screamed across the Brexian homeworld. Every military platform went active. Ships launched from their berths, their crews scrambling to combat stations. Defensive satellites swiveled, searching for the attacker. The woman was already accelerating toward the command station. 4 minutes, the clock was running. Brexian interceptors appeared ahead, moving to block her path. She didn't slow down, didn't even bother firing, just plowed through them like they were insects, her hull absorbing their weapons' fire without registering damage. 3 minutes. The command station's shields activated, space warped around it, gravitational fields strong enough to tear normal ships apart. The woman's sensors struggled to penetrate the distortion. "Can you lock on?" Carter asked. "Barely." The exotic shielding was more advanced than she'd anticipated. She'd need to get closer, much closer. 2 minutes. Brexian capital ships were converging now, their heavy weapons charging. The dreadnoughts were powering up their main cannons. If she stayed in the system much longer, even she might take damage. How close? Point-blank range. She'd need to physically touch the command station to guarantee penetration. 1 minute. Carter watched the Vrexian forces closing in, watched the dreadnought cannons reaching firing solutions, watched the trap tightening around them. Do it. Ram the station if you have to. The woman's acceleration tripled. Carter's protective gravity field strained. The command station grew larger, filling his vision. Its shields blazed like a miniature sun. 30 seconds. The dreadnoughts fired. 4 beams of concentrated destruction converged on the woman's position. She twisted, her organic hull flexing in ways that defied physics. 2 beams missed. 2 struck her aft sections. For the first time, Carter felt her pain. 20 seconds. She was wounded, not critically, but hurt. Her regeneration systems kicked in, repairing damage even as she maintained acceleration. The command station's shields were just ahead. 10 seconds. The woman opened every weapon port simultaneously, concentrated all her firepower on a single point in the shield. The exotic field held, rippling with stress. 5 seconds. Carter felt her determination, felt her pour energy into the bombardment that should have been reserved for regeneration. She was sacrificing her own healing to break through. The shield collapsed. The woman's penetrators struck the command station's core. The structure held for maybe 2 seconds before its central reactor destabilized. Then it came apart, fragments spinning away in all directions. The Brexian communication networks went silent. "We did it," Carter whispered. The woman didn't respond. She was too focused on escape, accelerating away from the pursuing dreadnoughts. Her wounded sections trailed debris, pieces of her hull sloughing off. Carter felt her pain as his own. How bad? Manageable. She'd heal, but it would take time. They cleared the system's edge, leaving the Vrexian forces behind. The woman's sensors showed chaos in their formations. Ships breaking off pursuit, others holding position, awaiting orders that would never come. The command structure was gone. The war was effectively over. Carter collapsed onto the transparent floor, exhaustion hitting him like a hammer. They'd won. Against impossible odds, they'd actually won. The woman showed him one last thing before he slipped into unconscious sleep. Human space. Humanity's colonies. Safe for now. Carter woke to find the woman standing over him, her 4 eyes watching with what he'd learned to recognize as concern. The garden had reformed around them, though some of the trees looked wilted, her wounds manifesting in her internal spaces. How long was I out? 16 hours. They were 3 systems away from Brexian space now, drifting in an empty sector while she healed. Carter sat up, his body aching. Did it work? Did the Brexians stand down? She showed him the communication intercepts. Brexian fleet commanders arguing with each other, their hierarchies collapsing without central authority. Some ships were retreating to defensive positions. Others remained aggressive but uncoordinated. A few had even started negotiating ceasefires with human forces. The war wasn't over, but the invasion had stopped. We bought them time, Carter said, gave humanity a chance to catch their breath. And now came the difficult part. The woman's damaged hull was regenerating slowly, but she'd need weeks to fully recover. More importantly, Carter needed to return to human space, needed to report what had happened, explain the alliance he'd formed, convince Command not to turn his new partner into a weapons program. They're going to want to dissect you, Carter said quietly. Study your technology. Figure out how to replicate it. She already knew, had anticipated this from the moment she'd chosen to help him. But she had conditions. She would share knowledge freely, answer questions, even allow limited examination. But she would not be imprisoned, would not be treated as property. If humanity wanted her help, they would accept her as an equal. I'll do everything I can, Carter promised, but I'm just a lieutenant. I don't have the authority to negotiate treaties. She touched his shoulder, 6 fingers gentle against his skin. He had more authority than he realized. He'd ended an invasion, destroyed an enemy command structure, formed humanity's first alliance with a truly alien intelligence. History would remember Lieutenant Dean Carter, whether he wanted it to or not. Great, no pressure then. The woman's amusement rippled through their connection. She liked his humor, liked how humans used levity to process fear. Carter stood, looking at the damaged trees around them. How can I help you heal faster? She couldn't. Her regeneration was automatic, driven by biological processes beyond acceleration. But she appreciated the offer. It was very human to want to fix things. So we wait, let you recover, then head to the nearest human outpost and hope they don't try to blow us out of space before we can explain. Actually, that wouldn't be necessary. She'd been monitoring human military channels. They'd been looking for him. Multiple search and rescue operations launched after his ship's destruction was confirmed. The Navy wanted their missing lieutenant back. More accurately, they wanted to know how a single patrol officer had survived a Brexian attack and subsequently crippled their entire invasion force.
They know it was us?
Some of it. The Brexians had been broadcasting warnings about an unknown superweapon. Human intelligence had connected it to the same region where Carter's ship had been destroyed. They were putting pieces together. Then we don't have time to wait for you to heal. We need to make contact before they decide you're a threat. The woman showed him a compromise. She could travel at reduced speed with her current damage, enough to reach human space within 2 days. By then, her critical systems would be repaired even if her hull wasn't perfect. Do it. The sooner we open dialogue, the better. She changed course, accelerating gently toward human territory. Carter spent the time preparing his report. trying to find words to explain what had happened. How he'd stumbled onto a living ship, how they'd fought together, how she wanted to help humanity. It sounded insane even to him. The human outpost appeared ahead. A small military station on the frontier, home to maybe 300 personnel. The woman held position outside weapons range and transmitted Carter's identification codes. The response was immediate. Shock, confusion, then demands for explanation. Carter opened a channel. "This is Lieutenant Dean Carter, serial number 774 Alpha Niner. I'm alive and requesting permission to dock. I have critical intelligence regarding the Vrexian threat and a diplomatic situation requiring immediate command attention." There was a long pause. Then a woman's voice, sharp with authority. "Carter, this is Commander Lisa Grant. Your ship was destroyed 8 days ago. How are you transmitting from an unknown vessel?" "It's complicated, Commander. I need to speak with the highest-ranking officer available. What I have to report goes beyond normal channels."
Another pause.
"Stand by." 20 minutes later, Carter found himself in a video conference with Admiral Raymond Cole, a man whose decorated career included 3 major fleet actions. The Admiral's face filled the screen, weathered and skeptical. "Lieutenant Carter, you've caused quite a stir. Our intelligence suggests you're aboard the vessel that destroyed the Vrexian command infrastructure. Care to explain how a patrol officer accomplished what our entire fleet couldn't?" Carter took a breath. "Sir, I didn't do it alone. I had help from someone who wants to establish formal relations with humanity." He told the story, all of it. The Admiral listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When Carter finished, Cole leaned back. "You're asking me to believe you formed an alliance with a sentient alien ship, a ship powerful enough to defeat Vrexian fleets single-handedly?" "Yes, sir. And this ship wants nothing in return except the right to observe humanity and to be treated as an ally, not a weapon to be controlled." Cole was silent for a long moment. "You understand the security implications. We can't just allow an unknown entity into our space based on one officer's word." "I understand, sir, but she saved my life, helped end an invasion, and she's asking for a chance to prove herself. That's more than the Vrexians ever offered us." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "She?" Carter nodded. "She's not a ship with an AI, sir. She is the ship, a living being, and she's earned the right to be called a person." Cole studied him. "You've changed, Lieutenant. 8 days ago you were a by-the-book officer. Now you're negotiating alien treaties. War changes people, sir. Dying changes them faster." A hint of a smile crossed the Admiral's face. "Fair point. All right, Carter. Here's what's going to happen. You'll bring your ally to Outpost Meridian. We'll arrange a proper first contact scenario. Medical teams, diplomats, scientists, all the official protocols. But understand this, if your friend makes one threatening move, we will respond with everything we have." "She won't, sir. She's patient. She's been waiting 8,000 years. She can handle our bureaucracy." "Let's hope you're right." Cole out. The transmission ended. Carter turned to find the woman beside him, her expression unreadable. "You heard?" Yes, she was pleased. Humanity's caution was understandable, wise even. She would prove herself worthy of their trust. "It won't be easy. There will be people who fear you, who want to exploit you." She knew. Every species had those elements. But they also had people like Carter, people who chose partnership over domination. That was enough. Carter extended his hand. She took it, 6 fingers wrapping around his 5. "Then let's go meet humanity." Together, the woman's ship moved forward, accelerating toward Outpost Meridian, toward first contact, toward a future neither species had anticipated. Carter watched the stars stream past and thought about the door. The moment she'd looked at him and started to close it, the test that had led to everything else, he'd passed by, refusing to break, by staying human even in the face of death. Maybe that's what she'd been looking for all along. Not perfection, not fearlessness, just the stubborn human refusal to give up. If so, she'd found it, and humanity had found an ally who would help them reach the stars. The woman sent one last pulse of information through their connection. Not words, not images, just pure meaning. "Welcome home, Dean Carter." He smiled. Yeah, home sounded good.